Blackhawks fall to the Red Wings 3-2 in the preseason opener. I've got a bunch of takeaways here to talk about in this video. Now, just a quick disclaimer to start. It is the preseason opener, just the first preseason game of the season. This really was a bunch of guys on both rosters that aren't going to be in the NHL. Obviously, we did see a decent amount. We saw a couple guys on the Blackhawks roster that are projected to start in the NHL, but on the Red Wings side, it was pretty much a full group of AHLers or guys that will be heading back to juniors. So again, first game, take it with a grain of salt, but also it's the first game. We've seen the first game under Jeff Blashill. We've seen the first game of the preseason, and there is plenty to talk about. I'm planning on doing these videos after each game this season. Now, we'll see once we get into the middle of the regular season how much new stuff we have to talk about then. But for now, there is plenty to break down. And I think the best way to start this video off is to kind of just state the obvious. The Blackhawks got dominated for the majority of this game, especially the second and third period. It was all Red Wings. The Red Wings put together multiple shifts, especially in that third period, that the Blackhawks were just kept in their zone for multiple minutes on end. They were getting caught on the ice for extended periods of time. And a lot of times it was just sloppy plays in the D zone, turning pucks over unnecessarily. We saw that a few times from a few different guys, and I think that is to be expected early in the season, first game of the season in a new system. And I think the biggest note worth mentioning, because the Blackhawks looked tired this game, especially as the game went on. They came out pretty strong in that first period, but they really wore down and the Red Wings took control of the game. But it's also worth noting, they haven't had a break, a day off since the start of training camp. This has been a really tough training camp for the Blackhawks, and they've only had one scrimmage day so far in camp. The Red Wings have been scrimmaging for most of their training camp so far, so that obviously played a major factor. Also, the Blackhawks traveled to Detroit 2 days, so they didn't get a travel day or anything and get to do the morning skate in Detroit. They did the morning skate in Chicago, and then they traveled to Detroit and played the game on the same night. So a lot of factors that also went into kind of the Blackhawks wearing down overall. So I'm not buying too much into it. I'm not super concerned this is going to be a common factor moving forward. If you watched Jeff Blashill in his morning skate interview this morning, kind of hinted that this would basically happen, that he knew and expected the team would be playing tired tonight, and he wanted that experience for the guys. He wanted them to experience playing tired in the games because he knows that is going to happen throughout the course of the season. You can watch that interview on the Blackhawks YouTube page. It's just a quick one, and he kind of just basically said he expects someone to be tired tonight, and that kind of hinted, and that was on display in that second and third period, especially, where they kind of just ran out of gas, everyone on the roster. The Red Wings definitely took control of the game and really didn't let the Blackhawks create really anything in that third period. So if you're looking at it from a conditioning standpoint, I'm really not too concerned. I don't think this is going to be a common theme. I will say where I was not necessarily concerned, but there was, I guess, a little more cause for concern, was just in the system play in this game. There were a lot of sloppy mistakes in the defensive zone. The penalty kill did not look good in this game, and that has been something that Blashill's been working on, implementing a new penalty kill system throughout camp, and our first look at that in the preseason game today, it was not good. The team clearly wasn't especially comfortable with the defensive system today. Obviously, there were a lot of factors, as I mentioned, that went into the sloppy play today, but overall there was lots of positioning errors, lots of sloppy turnovers in the D zone, and lots of extended shifts that really didn't need to be that long. So there's definitely a lot that needs to be cleaned up. It definitely got sloppy later on as the game progressed, but also it is the first preseason game, and I'm not taking too much away from it. I definitely expect them to better this stuff, and if this still is happening as we get into preseason game 5, preseason game 6, and maybe even into the start of the regular season, then that is a huge cause for concern. There is reason to be very concerned. But for the first preseason game, I'm not buying into it too much, though obviously I guess it wasn't ideal to see. I think my main takeaways for this game are going to be more in individual performances based on what I saw. A lot of guys were getting opportunities to play tonight that want to crack the NHL roster. In my pregame notes, I wrote that the guys that I was watching specifically throughout this game was Lucas Reichel, Ethan Del Mastro, and Kevin Korchinski. Those are the three guys that I feel like have the most to prove in this camp and in these preseason games. And I think just to start off with them, it was a pretty disappointing effort overall. Lucas Reichel got an opportunity on the first line today, playing with Connor Bedard and Colton Dach, and he really wasn't too noticeable. He had a good chance in pretty early on in like his second or third shift where Bedard set him up on kind of a cross-creased look. But outside of that chance, he really just didn't create any opportunities. He really wasn't too noticeable. Reichel, that's kind of the thing with him. He's not going to play bad. He wasn't making bad plays, but he just wasn't doing enough to create opportunities and to stand out, create chances for his team. He just wasn't. He was just kind of blending in, and you really can't do that if you're trying to make the team and you have an opportunity to play on the first line with the best player on the ice, which was Connor Bedard. I guess we'll just segue into Connor Bedard before we get into the defenseman, because Bedard did look really good today. Everybody wasn't at 100%. They were obviously, everyone was a little tired. Their legs weren't fully there for all the reasons I listed at the beginning of the video. So I'm not really looking at that too specifically. We didn't see Bedard's top end speed, I think, or his max speed that he has in tonight's game, even though he looked pretty fast overall, but I wouldn't say it was anything too crazy, anything too different from what we saw last year. But I think that everybody was playing with tired legs today, so I'm not looking at that so much. I think really just Bedard was setting up chances for everyone on the ice. He was the best player on the ice in this game, which is what you'd expect from him because you are playing the Red Wings kind of B team. Like there was maybe one or two players on that Red Wings team that are going to be in the NHL this year. So he wasn't playing like great competition, and he dominated that competition. He created so many chances. He had that one-time power play snipe to get on the board, and I wrote in my notes, I thought Bedard was really good on the forecheck today too. He was playing physical, especially in that first period. Maybe he kind of ran out of gas towards the end of the game, or looked more to create chances and create offense when they were down. But especially in that first period early on in the game, he was finishing a few hits. He gave someone a cross check I saw that knocked him over. He was playing a lot more physical than what we've seen in the past. And just forechecking wise, I saw multiple times where he went in on the forecheck and came out with the puck. He set Sam Renzel up with multiple chances where he went in on the forecheck, came out with the puck, and found Renzel, who was crashing in from the blue line. He was definitely the best player on the ice today. I don't think we need to dissect his game too much. Last thing I'll mention though about Connor is that he did win 70% of his draws today, which is another encouraging sign with his faceoffs, which hopefully will take a year 3 jump along with his production. And I guess I might as well just talk about the third member of that first line, which is Colton Dach, who was playing up on the first line. He was super noticeable today, super impactful, as we expect him to be in a bottom 6 role this year in the NHL. He had 6 hits and 2 shots in 16 minutes of ice time. He was in every scrum in front of the net. He was there after every shot, getting in the goalie's face, and he was finishing pretty much every single hit, which is really a breath of fresh air. The Blackhawks haven't had really too many players who will do that in the past few years. They signed, Patty Maroon last year. He really didn't finish too many hits, even though he was brought on to be more of a physical player. Nick Foligno will do that on occasion, but Colton Dach's been one of the few guys that is looking to do that on every shift, and I think he is going to have a really big role in the bottom 6 this year because he is impactful. He does impact the game, and that was on display tonight. We saw that in a first line role where he was able to create a few chances and be physical in this game. I also really liked him in the net front role on the power play. I actually hope he gets a look and that net front role, maybe on the second unit, even with the NHL team this year. I think he fits perfectly in that role. He's able to drag the puck and bring the puck to the front of the net really better than anyone else who plays the net front role on this team. Most players will kind of sit in the corner or sit behind the net and maybe make a pass back out to the flanks to set things back up. But Dach is actually willing to take it to the front of the net. I don't know if we saw that tonight, but we've seen that in past Colton Dach games in the AHL in last preseason, and I'm hoping we see that for this NHL season. But those are my takeaways from the first line guys, and those guys really were the best forwards on the ice for the Blackhawks. I thought Moore was moving pretty well throughout this game. He had a few rushes where he was able to carry it wide or up the middle, moving pretty well as you would expect from him. I thought Frank Nazar was kind of rusty in this game. He did have an assist on the on the first goal, on the Bedard goal. He looked fine. He was a little rusty with the puck, I felt like. Didn't always make the best plays in this game, but it's early. I'm not too concerned with him. I think moving to the back end is really the best thing to do at this point. We saw a lot of performances from defensemen that are looking to make the team. Some already have their spot on the team, like Sam Renzel, who tonight had 5 shots, 4 hits, a block, an assist, all in 24 minutes of ice time, which led all members of the Blackhawks. Reichel looked really good again in the first pair defenseman role. However, his partner, Ethan Del Mastro, wasn't quite as good. He did have 4 hits, did have a shot, did have a block, but did have 2 giveaways in 22 minutes of ice time. He got an opportunity on the first pair as suspected. I talked about that in my previous video, a little more on my thoughts for Del Mastro. I talked about how I was excited to see him this preseason, and I am excited to see him in future games, but I felt like tonight he didn't quite seize the opportunity. He definitely didn't look his sharpest that we've seen Ethan Del Mastro. I am going to go back and rewatch this game, and when I do, he's going to be a player I focus on when he's on the ice. I'm going to watch all of his shifts, as well as a few other guys like Lucas Reichel. I'll definitely rewatch his shifts to see a little bit better, because obviously I can't, you can't watch these guys specifically while you're watching the whole game overall. But just from what I saw from Del Mastro tonight, it didn't look like his sharpest effort, but again, he should have another opportunity this preseason to be playing these top pair minutes. And I think it's interesting that the Blackhawks are letting him have this opportunity, because it seems like they're willing to give him the job if he can play up to that standard. Wyatt Kaiser looked super good today. He had a snipe. When he dragged that puck back, I knew that was going in, because Kaiser can really rip the puck when he wants to. He was wearing the A tonight. He's definitely locked into this lineup paired with Artem Levshunov. That pair is going to be in the opening night lineup. I didn't feel like Levshunov was too good this game, though. He had a lot of turnovers, it felt like. Didn't look too sharp in his defensive zone. Did have some glimpses, especially on the shift where Kaiser scored. He had a really nice defensive play, then carried the puck up into the offensive zone, which led to the Kaiser goal. But really outside of that, Levshunov still looked pretty rusty. The decision-making wasn't his sharpest tonight. Definitely looks like he will be playing in the NHL, though, either way, no matter really how this preseason goes. But definitely hoping to see a little more from him as the year progresses. But again, he's a young defenseman. These growing pains are expected. Pretty sure this is his first preseason, because he was dealing with an injury last year. So I'm really not too concerned with it. Last guy on the defense core I will talk about, shout out Louis Crevier, but Kevin Korchinski wasn't too noticeable tonight, but I think it's important to remember, especially with defensemen, not being noticeable isn't necessarily a bad thing. Again, Korchinski is someone I'm really going to focus in on when I rewatch this game, but just my initial reaction, initial takeaways, I really didn't notice Korchinski too much, but again, not necessarily a bad thing. He had a shot, had a takeaway, no giveaways that were listed. It seemed like he played pretty solid defensively. You want to see a little more of him offensively, because that's where he really thrives, and that's where his role is going to be with the Blackhawks. He's going to be called on to be an offensive creator, but again, he's playing third pair minutes, only played 16 minutes tonight, so I'm not too concerned with kind of a slower showing. But if he wants to make the team, even though it seems like it's not going to happen, these kind of showings where he doesn't really stand out aren't going to help him. I don't think it's that big of a deal, though. I'd personally rather have him go back to Rockford, be the #1 defenseman, and be able to play in every situations, where if you have him on this third pair, you kind of get nights like tonight where he's not necessarily bad, but he's just not really going to be creating too much offense when you know there's a lot there. Goaltending wise, man, Arvid had a game tonight. I'm a big Arvid fan, and he's looking sharp to start off this season. Stopped 40 of 43 shots. I mean, shots on goal were 43-15 at one with 5 minutes left in the third period. At that point, the Red Wings were out shooting the Blackhawks 14-2 in the third, and it wasn't just low quality shots either. The Red Wings had their fair share of high quality chances, and I thought Soderblom was on his A game, especially with how sloppy the Blackhawks were playing in their D zone and on the penalty kill. There's going to be some growing pains with this new penalty kill system, because man, they were leaving guys open in front of the net just way too easy for the Red Wings to capitalize and create high quality chances. It was pretty sloppy. I like the idea of the aggressive penalty kill, but the positioning definitely needs to be worked on for it to be effective. Arvid really stood on his head tonight and kept the Blackhawks in this game. Again, being outshot 43-17, you really have no business winning that game. So the fact that it was a 1-goal game and a close game in the third period, it's really all thanks to Arvid. Blackhawks will look to bounce back next on Saturday in St. Louis. That's the next preseason game that's scheduled. I'm going to work to fine-tune this kind of game recap format, so I'm really giving the most interesting points and kind of keeping it quick and concise, not dragging it out too long. But this is the first one of the season, so it's my preseason too, and I really can't be any sloppier than the Blackhawks were tonight. I did make a takeaways post game on Twitter at Blackhawks Focus. A few of you guys responded to that. Mostly the consensus was allowing 43 shots to the Red Wings B team isn't great. Soderblom, the game could have been 6-2 if it wasn't for Soderblom. Reminded me a lot of these games the past 3 seasons. Pretty much the consensus was that it was sloppy tonight. Arvid was really good tonight, and they're definitely going to need to clean things up. We'll see what happens on Saturday. It's going to do it for this video. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on this game and maybe what I should focus on specifically in these videos to make them the best, but also the most concise and insightful as possible. That's going to do it. Thank you for watching.